Huge news from the Daily Mail this afternoon, who are reporting that Tim Steidten has essentially been banned from any dealings with the first team squad at West Ham for the remainder of the season. So much so, his access at the training ground is now restricted. This news has been confirmed by ex-West Ham employee as well, so there's a lot of credibility in this report. And do you know what? It makes sense. Sometimes these reports come out, whether it be a transfer rumour, something to do with David Moyes, a potential replacement for Moyes, and you take it with a pinch of salt because you struggle to believe it. But with this one, it makes sense. I'm going to tell you exactly what the Daily Mail has said. I'm going to give you my opinion on it. And I think a lot of people are going to interpret the same report in various different ways. I'm intrigued to get your thoughts as well. But if you're new around here, please do subscribe and drop a like on the video by clicking thumbs up. Both things are free, it takes a few seconds, helps out the video, helps the channel, makes me very happy. Anyway, the Daily Mail have stated West Ham technical director Tim Steidten has been informed he is no longer allowed in the first team dressing room because of the ongoing uncertainty over manager David Moyes' future. Mail Sport has learned that following internal talks, it has been decided that Steidten will not enter the senior dressing room at the London Stadium or the club's Rush Green training ground. While Moyes' future is under so much uncertainty, with his current deal due to expire at the end of the season, and as Steidten actively seeks replacements for the Scot, it has been deemed inappropriate for the German administrator to be in and around the players and staff. Steidten has a base at the London Stadium and training ground, but his access to all parts of both facilities is now restricted. And it feels a bit like another nail in David Moyes' coffin, but I think it makes sense. Now, I'm actually going to dismiss the speculation since Tim Steidten arrived. Since Steidten arrived, it's always been reported it's been a rocky relationship at best between the two of them. However, they've been seen to getting on really well before games, so on and so forth. A lot of people have reported they've seen Moyes and Steidten getting on. But I'm going to forget all that previous speculation and give them the benefit of the doubt that they had a good relationship up until, let's say, a month ago, when all this speculation over Moyes' replacement began. Regardless of how well they got on, this was always going to put pressure on that relationship. Tim Steidten, David Moyes' boss, has been told by David Sullivan, the owner and chairman of West Ham United, to find replacements, draw up a list of people that could replace David Moyes as manager, speak to the people on your list and find out if they're interested in the West Ham job. They've even gone one stage further and flew Ruben Amorim over. A lot of speculation that we've already had talks with Julian Lopetegui. Maybe we have, maybe we haven't. At best or at worst, depending how you look at it, Steidten is looking for replacements for David Moyes. Whether or not he's interviewed them or not is a different matter. Put that to one side for now. He is looking for replacements for Moyes. That is always going to put Steidten and Moyes' relationship under extreme pressure. I think it's the best thing for Steidten to stay away from David Moyes. Maybe not so much the players, but from David Moyes and his coaching staff in particular. I think it's best that they go their own separate ways for the next few weeks. Let Moyes focus on the first team. Let Moyes focus on the remaining 3 games of the season. Let Tim Steidten focus on a potential replacement for David Moyes, as well as any contract situations that need ironed out. Because at the minute, whether we think Bonner, Creswell or Johnson should be given a new deal or not, the club are trying to negotiate with these players, and I would include Divine Mubama in there. I imagine they're trying to tie Mubama down. The last thing you need is to be trying to conduct that business while the sporting director and manager cannot stand to be in the same room as each other. Let Steidten go do his thing. Let David Moyes go do his thing. Keep them away from each other. It just makes sense. Quite frankly, I'd rather forget Tim Steidten, the director of football at West Ham, forget his title, that's what he is essentially. I don't really want him in the first team changing room on a match day anyway. I think that should be kept separate. Would you want Karen Brady in the changing room? No. Would you want Sullivan? No. Would you even want Mark Noble in the changing room on a Saturday before the game? Not really. I don't want Tim Steidten to be allowed in the changing room. That should be for the manager. That's the manager's environment. That's his place of work. Those above David Moyes should stay literally above in those areas of the London Stadium. So I think the fact that Steidten's been allowed in the changing room, and like I said, this is on Moyes as well, because as mentioned before the game, you can see them during the warm-up. You can see Steidten and Moyes on the touchline speaking, sometimes having a laugh and stuff. So they've had a form of good relationship, but perhaps it's almost like too comfortable and it's gone beyond the working relationship. And now when it gets to the nitty gritty of it, Steidten's got to do his job, his friendship with David Moyes is now there and causing an issue. I don't think Steidten should have been in the first team change room on match days anyway. Like I said, I think that's the manager's environment. The issue is he's been allowed, and we're now changing that and saying, no, you're not allowed in there. As I said, what's missing from that report is who has banned Tim Steidten. Maybe Tim Steidten said, I'm not going anywhere near the first team or David Moyes. It's unlikely due to the way it's worded, which is Steidten's found his access restricted. So you'd imagine it's come from either David Sullivan, Karen Brady, or David Moyes. One of those three, I'd imagine, is the ones that's put this restrictions in place. In all honesty, I don't see a problem with it. Because if it allows Tim Steidten to go do his job and to go find somebody to replace David Moyes, then great. Express employees reported that David Moyes is sort of upset and that he's unhappy that Tim Steidten has been approaching alternatives for him and flew Ruben Amorim over for talks in London last week. 2 weeks ago now, is it? It's quite a while ago now already, isn't it? 2 weeks ago that Ruben Amorim came over, and that's upset David Moyes, and as a result of that, he's unhappy with Tim Steidten, sort of going behind his back essentially. That's probably how David Moyes will be viewing it, as somebody he maybe feels like he's got a good working relationship with is stabbing him in the back a little bit by going out and seeking alternatives. Steidten is just doing his job. That's his job. Even if we weren't replacing Moyes, I'd expect Steidten to have one eye on potential replacements anyway. Just on the off chance Moyes goes for whatever reason, a la Potter at Brighton. As soon as he went, and knew De Zerbi was the guy they wanted to go get. And whoever comes in next, I hope Steidten continues to have an eye on who would replace that manager once he moves on, whether it's at his decision or the club's decision. We should have the next manager not lined up as in deal done, but just an eye on him so you know exactly who you're going to go approach and try and get in to replace the next manager along. But obviously it's big news, and I just hope it's not put Steidten's. The one thing I do hope is that if it was Moyes that's put this in place, and like I said, I understand if it's Moyes that's done it, I understand if it's Steidten that's done it. To some extent, I hope it's not Sullivan, because then he's getting in the way of those two people. I hope one of Moyes or Steidten has made this call, and I understand each argument as to why they've decided Steidten shouldn't be around the first team for the remainder of the season whilst we get this managerial situation sorted out. I just hope it hasn't put Tim Steidten's nose out of joint. He's had a lot to deal with since coming to West Ham. He did his interviews, very brief interview a month ago maybe, where he suggested or stated that what has happened at West Ham wasn't what he expected. He thought he'd have full control at West Ham. He's not had that. So he's had to go on this learning journey. But things like that can put his nose out of joint, and he would see Moyes moving on as an opportunity to perhaps get more control at the club. And I just hope that this news hasn't upset Tim Steidten. But like I said, I'd imagine he would understand. Even if Moyes has made this call, I'd expect Tim Steidten to understand why Moyes is uncomfortable having him around himself and his coaches and the players for the duration of the season. The one thing that I actually take from this, Steidten being banned doesn't actually bother me too much, because I think it makes sense. But I actually take this as good news. And the reason I take this as good news is because I've almost been looking for confirmation that Steidten is heavily involved in this new manager search, identifying a new manager. And that's another bit of evidence, another piece of evidence that Tim Steidten's the one coming up with the shortlist. He's the one approaching these new potential managers. That's what this article has given me. It's given me more proof that it's Tim Steidten in the driving seat and not David Sullivan. Obviously, we've still got the Sullivan barrier. We've discussed that in many videos. We will probably discuss it in many videos to come about Sullivan being an issue when it comes to replacing David Moyes. But what that has done is given me hope, because over the last week or so, I've found myself getting more and more worried that David Moyes will still be here next season. Just there's little small things that suggest that Moyes still may be here. Because like I said, the club have always peddled this line. That report to me makes me feel more confident again that that Moyes is going at the end of the season. The one thing that makes me slightly worried is if Moyes does end up staying, how do they come back from this? Because this almost feels like the end of a relationship between manager and sporting director. Forget who they are for a second. Between manager and sporting director, it feels like the nuclear option a little bit. And if Moyes was to remain here next season, how do they come back from that? I'm not sure they do. Maybe they do. I don't know. But like I said, it's given me a little bit of confidence that A, Steidten is leading the search, and B, there is actually a search, and the likelihood of David Moyes moving on is slightly greater than what it was perhaps prior to Tim Steidten being banned. Anyway, I'm intrigued to get your thoughts on this, because like I said, I think everybody is going to interpret the same report in various different ways. Already you've got some fans saying it's David Moyes, and some fans saying it's Tim Steidten, and others saying it's David Sullivan getting involved. So everybody's already sort of trying to piece together and work out who's banned who. Personally, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a mutual... It says internal talks. It's not an argument. Well, it could be an argument, I guess. It says internal talks. I just hope that between them all, they've decided that the best thing, just for everybody's emotions and feelings, the best thing is that Tim Steidten goes and does his business over there. David Moyes does his business over there. We've only got 3 weeks to go of the season. Well, 2.5 weeks to go till the season's finished now. Let's just get through the next 2.5 weeks, because Steidten and Moyes, if Moyes is going, they don't necessarily need to interact that much. Anyway, there you go. Breaking news from the Daily Mail. Our Chelsea preview will be up a bit later on this evening. If you've enjoyed this video, please do drop a like on it by clicking thumbs up. Subscribe to Tam's Chat. And like I said, get involved in the comments. I'll be back later on, take a look at what you're all saying and get a little bit interactive with you. I'll catch up with you then.